check, 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 chop it down, check, 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 chop it down, chop it down, chop it down, you gon' chop it down, chop it down, chop it down, chop it down, you gon' chop it down.
I just appreciate everybody
Damn,
watching.
set,
Man.
Watch him throw the ball, we gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through fourth and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders, heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive. This is Trap or Die.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome into another episode of Trap or Die podcast, provided to you by 214 Media, man. Welcome in, everybody. Everybody on the YouTube side, appreciate you joining. I see the comments. Hawk, what's going on, player? Al 2, what's up with you? Depression settings. I don't look. Talk to me, bro. Who in the hell is this? Yeah, don't follow her private photos. We're going to remove these people right now.
Bots are here.
The bots
we
are
made
here.
it. We made it.
Oh my god. But listen, administrative items, man. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're on that Twitch side, make sure you hit that follow button. If you are on the Twitter side, we definitely appreciate you checking in. Definitely appreciate you tuning in. You don't have to do anything special, but if you do want to be a part of the chat, try to migrate over when you get a chance to the YouTube side, man, so we can see your comments. We don't have comments on Periscope on Twitter, so if you are part of the conversation over there, you can talk, but I just won't be able to see it. So I tell everybody that every single time that I go live on Twitter. With that being said, let's go ahead and get I have not set up the mods yet. I'm new to this, bro. I'm new to this, dog. Wambi, I said Wambi. Oh my God. Watubi, bro. Appreciate you. That's a name for me, man. Appreciate you checking in. Appreciate the love. Appreciate the support, big dog. Thank you for the donation. Let's go ahead and get the good man AJ in, and you know he got something to say. Let's see what that name say for AJ right quick. Now is the time. All right, so we have to have some structure to this conversation because we know the hot topic item going on, and I think we'll start off with the hot topic item, right? Because Ron Rivera has some things to say about the quarterback situation as well. And then our guy P 50 Gut Blog, you know, he's been on the show 1,000 times. He had a tweet that he put out earlier today that I thought it was worth talking about as well here, because it reminded me of something that I said in Spaces. I think AJ may or may not have been in there, but we're in the Spaces often, the same Spaces often. So it reminded me of a conversation that I want to bring up about this question that P posed on Twitter. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and get into the conversation, the big ticket item. Once again, appreciate everybody just checking in. All right. Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke. Fellas, hey, Dre, you asked this Sunday night. What would you do heading into the San Francisco game? Is he starting? And you know, we had our responses. AJ said he's starting him. I said that I wouldn't. I also don't think the coaches would, but that you know, if he has a bad game, he could be replaced in the game. Dre, I believe you said the same thing, or that he wasn't going to play at all. Carson, meaning he wasn't going to play in the San Fran game. I forgot exactly what you said.
Oh no, for me, the question was if the question was if, you know, Heineke had a bad game and you lose, or he doesn't, if he contributes to the losing, is he starting after the Giants game? That's what I wanted to know. And you know, you said you still didn't think he would be at that point. AJ said he thought he would bench him. But me, after the game, then I guess the feeling for me, especially listening to Ron talk, is like, you're already thinking about it. Just go ahead and do it. I mean, you're essentially saying he has one more game or I'm benching him. I mean, if you just listen to Ron's words, that's basically what he's saying. Like, one more game and I'm going to bench him. My question is, why put off tomorrow what you can do today? I mean, you know what Taylor Heineke is. I mean, he's not going to change at this point. I mean, yeah, he could still go out there. He could have clutch plays. He can put together a good drive or so, but he's also contributed to losing. And I think, this is pretty much the guy you're going to get on a weekly basis. A lot of those times, like I said, in weeks prior, you weren't necessarily winning because of Taylor Heineke. I thought he made some winning plays in games, but he also was a defining factor or a reason why those games had to come down to clutch moments in a sense. And you get the, feeling that Ron, in a sense, has been thinking that as well. And I think, throughout this whole process that Ron's whole thing is, if it isn't broke, we're not going to fix it. Like, basically, we're going to ride the Taylor wave. So, which is why you see the, the change in some of his comments this week, like, or at least the shift. So for me,
we could talk about that one. Yeah, go ahead.
But just for me personally, I would say I would go with Carson simply because if you're going to wait till
after, I heard to say,
let's say if Heineke goes out and loses this game, he plays bad again, then you're going to Carson. And at this point, I'm wondering why would you go to Carson at this point? Because you're probably going to be knocked out of the playoffs, or at least make the playoffs a lot harder than you have to make it. So, what would be the purpose of going to Carson then, when this game here is very pivotal? So I would say at this point, I would have made the move this week.
All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and flesh this thing out. I'm going to fit Scott Turner into the situation. And actually, I want to talk. I'm gonna start on that first. Fellas, I said this on the Hogs Haven podcast. And I said this: we're not deviating away from the conversation of Carson Wentz or Scott or Taylor Heineke. We're not doing that. But Scott Turner needs to be a part of this conversation, because what the F? I got to start watching my language here now that we're making some money, or I'm trying to. I don't know. We're not making money yet. What the hell was he doing Sunday night? I don't get it. I didn't like it. And what I mean by that is, I want to emphasize the fact that Al too. I want to be clear to everybody that's in here right now. Montel, I see you. Appreciate you checking in. I don't have a problem with Scott Turner's play designs. Like, I think there's a nuanced conversation when it comes to like the actual offensive coordinator thing. But I think we know by now he has an issue with the flow of the game. I don't have an issue with you handing the ball off to Curtis Samuel, but the way you're doing it and the timing in which you do it on Sunday in particular was a problem. I allege, and I'm not going to rehash, like, those are the obvious things, right? But my thing is with understanding how he felt about the game and how he flowed with the game, I think that there was ulterior motives at place here. I think there was ulterior motives with him. I think that there was ulterior motives with Taylor Heineke. And what I mean by that specifically is that seeing how Turner called his plays, it's like, all right, like, think about the jet sweeps that Curtis Samuel had and the looks that Curtis Samuel got. Like, those handoffs alone were so confusing. When did you see like the type of, like, that they try to run like these power plays from different alignments and had Curtis Samuel like lined right behind the tackle and try to get a power run that way? Like, they didn't flow well. The interior offensive lineman didn't flow well. They didn't pull right. And you got Curtis Samuel right off their ass. And like, how do you expect them to hit the hole as quickly as Curtis Samuel is when he's moving his feet? Like, he's a fast player, and you wanted your offensive lineman to get put in that position, the two slowest individuals in Turner and Norwell. Like, how do you put yourself in that position? But furthermore, throughout the game, just completely abandoning the fact that your team is so effective on the ground with your two running backs, Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. I think that the spotlight really kind of changed his idea of how this offense should look. I think that the spotlight put an encouragement or a light bulb in his idea, like, all right, I'm going to let the world know, like, this is my moment to shine, despite how we got here and how we got to 7-5 football, 7-5-1 football. Like, all of those things, I think, were in his head in that moment. And I'm not saying that he purposefully said to hell with everything else. I think that he got excited at the fact that everybody was watching his offense, and everybody's watching his offense that night. And it's like, all right, I'm going to make sure that I make sure everybody on that defense looks stupid, and I'm the reason why they look stupid.
Well, Mo, I wanted to ask you, because this is your point, and you actually brought up a great point, because Logan Paulson actually had mentioned something similar, but he went a different route with it. He thought Scott Turner was trying to emulate what the Eagles did to the Giants the week prior with the passing game and, you know, some of that stuff. And I was like, why would he go away from what's been working all, you know, for him, or at least this team? And he definitely went away from that. But you and Logan, you know, you were all on the same path, but you all went in a different route with how you perceived it. Do you think there's any validity to what Logan said?
I mean, I'll take his word for it. I heard it as well. And the thing is, I didn't look at the Eagles game the week prior, so that's why I was like, I don't really know. I take his word for it. And that's perfectly fine. And it's also a good thing to think about in that, you know, Turner clearly wasn't himself. He wasn't himself from a play calling perspective. He wasn't himself in, like, he clearly knows his team by now. Like, we are at the end of the season. He knows what his team is good at. So what are we doing? Like, the biggest strength of that team, the New York Giants, is their pass rush. Given their current makeup, it's their pass rush. And we're putting the offense in position to get lit up and have Taylor lit up. Like, I won't forget, like, the reporters were saying after the game, Taylor was visibly ginger after the game in the locker room, or either in the locker room or walking to the locker room, one or the other. Like, he got lit up, and I think those things are all fair. And what Logan said is interesting, in that he's like, it is a copycat league, and I think those are real things. So I'm not going to necessarily sit here and say that that's a problem, right? But I think when you know your team and you know that the team that you're going up against has a huge issue stopping the run, like, think about it. They had over 140 yards against the Giants Sunday night and still lost. But they had over 100 yards rushing, and you still found a way to lose this game in a situation where you could have clearly took control from the very beginning. Like, 30 yards in the first half. 30 yards in the first quarter for Brian Robinson. Like, that should have told you how his night was finna go. Like, I thought he was about to get turned up. I thought this was like a 150 yard game for Brian Robinson. That fool finished with 80. What's up, Brian?
I didn't really see. I watched the game, Eagles versus Giants. I didn't really see Scott Turner implement anything that the Eagles did, especially as many times as they went empty. I didn't see the Eagles really do that. I think in Sunday night's game, they went empty at least 5 times. I could be wrong. They still went empty after the strip sack fumble for a touchdown. It was just like, this is just stubbornness. Like, at the end of the day, you know, Scott Turner just doesn't really have a set plan when it comes to calling plays. Like, he thinks that he's being masterful and okay, I done ran enough here. Let me go ahead and get into the pass game. But at the same token, you don't realize who you got at quarterback. And this is the main reason why Taylor got brought in, is because of familiarity that Scott Turner has with him. So you know him better than anybody else, you and Ron in particular. Like, the fan base has been having to grow to know who he is, but you've seen him in practice. You've seen him in preseason. You've seen him against an even stronger defense at that time with the Carolina Panthers, you know, and yet you still alienate what his strengths are, and the run game helping to move the ball downfield. I mean, it's just unfortunate, man. Like, and then make it worse, they gave this guy an extension in March. I've been saying this shit all year, bro. Like, where in his play calling and his scheme or identity says that this person should get an extension, or that it was even going to get better under Carson Wentz? Like, even now, it's like he's doing basic shit, but he still can't even get that done correctly. When you go 1 for 10 for third down, then you're 1 for 3 in the red zone, there's major issues in your play calling scheme that's not helping you sustain drives, and then you're averaging good run yards per game, like, within the rushing game, and you still can't convert on third downs. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, the third downs are typically short unless they get a penalty. I just feel like they played so undisciplined overall, especially coming off the bye. But I guess, Mual, I'll let you get into the real topic, which is, I guess, Heineke and Wentz.
What did Montel had asked us a question? Is it me or did that game feel like a lot? All right, we're gonna circle back to this one, to the tail end, because this is part of the question from our guy P. He asked this on Twitter, so we're gonna circle back to that one. So that's a good one, right here, Montel. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the conversation with Ron Rivera on Carson Wentz. He spoke with JP Finley, and he had mentioned, here's the transcript right here, Carson being healthy. Does that change the situation at all? Ron Rivera said that it does. It does. Going into the second half, scoring early, moving the ball the way we did, it would have been hard for me to make a change right there. JP followed up saying, if that went differently, could you have made a change? Yes. Ron Rivera answered, if it had, but again, it didn't. So it never crossed my mind. Once we got that score, I felt like, okay, here we go. Here it comes. You're thinking, here we go, and let's continue with this. So that's one part of the conversation. I'm trying to think. Oh, David Aldridge. Yeah, I was trying to remember. Like, he had a presser as well where he mentioned the change in the presser indicated that he was thinking about it too. Like he said, it's hard not to think about in essence. And maybe I can try and pull up the quote while I transition to you all, fellas. But like clearly we heard what Ron Rivera just said in the interview with JP Finley. I'm going to pull up the quote that he said with David Aldridge. But at this point, like I put out some clips of that game, like early on, like just the problem plays. Like that shit pissed me off. Now I just put those things out there. Like I'm at the conclusion that Taylor is on his last leg, and Taylor's on his last leg in the first half. Like if that first half don't look good, they're not rocking with Taylor no more. I'm gonna get a floor to you all. What do you all make of Ron's comments? And we'll kind of divvy up from there.
I mean, I don't make shit of Ron's comments. I'm tired of hearing him talk, man. At the end of the day, it's like do something. Like Dre just said to start off the show. I mean, I guess Dre, you could step in and help me again with what you said, but it was something like about today's time versus tomorrow's time, or something
old
like
man
that.
Quote. It's why put off today what you could do tomorrow. That's what an OG would tell
you.
Yeah,
it's like there's so many things that they could do with this roster to see if it might give them an extra oomph, and they refuse to do it. Whether it be starting Cosme full time at one of the guard positions, activating Chris Paul. They're raving about him in practice and different shit, but we can't see him on the field. Why? Even earlier in the season, why couldn't we possibly have seen Sam Howell? Not to bring that topic back up, but it's like we talk about a lot of guys that should have opportunities and they don't get those. And now in this situation when it's all on the line in year 3, you still having the quarterback dilemma. You still having play calling dilemma on both sides of the ball, and you're still in the hunt. You're well within the hunt, and you're not scoring. You're not being productive offensively in the passing game, especially, and scoring points. Why? What more are you waiting for? You played this team twice in 2 weeks, and essentially, in my opinion, they're both losses. You tie one game, that's a loss in my opinion. Then you come off a bye and you look like shit, and nothing improved, nothing changed philosophy-wise, nothing changed strategy-wise to gain you more points. You end up scoring just about the same points that you ended up tying with.
Basically 16 points per game in the two Giants games.
And there were so many mishaps within the red zone alone. Like, forget the penalties, whatever, or what should have been called. They should have scored several times within the red zone. Like, the Giants are not a good defense. Like, they're playing with bottom tier cornerbacks, and you can't even take advantage of that. So it's like, what more are you waiting for? Like, you think that Taylor Heineke going against the top defense in the NFL and DeMeco Ryans and Nick Bosa, like, Kayvon Thibodeau is a nice player. He's going to be good as he grows in his NFL career, but he's not even half of Nick Bosa. He's not even half of Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is going to have a field day. Like, those that play fantasy sports, FanDuel, whatever you do, definitely pick San Francisco defense to score points because they're gonna be coming after his ass. Like they play mixture of covers. They play man, they play zone. Like Taylor Heineke can't figure those things out. And we already know that Scott Turner's gonna go away from the run, even if it's successful, even if they are gaining a whole bunch of yardage. So I mean, I just feel like, you know, time is of an essence. Um, it's really going to be unfair to Carson Wentz if they don't put him in this week and decide to wait until the actual game happens and Taylor isn't playing good and make that substitution and then ask Carson Wentz to finish the last two games to possibly put them over the hill in the playoffs against the Cowboys and the Browns. Like that's just
So you're
wild.
saying you think you need some game reps before you give him the last two games?
I just feel like start it off with him. Like overall, like don't ask him to come in here and be the savior in the middle of the game because that's potentially what these comments are alluding to. Like if we don't see Taylor do some things where we're scoring, we're definitely gonna pull the plug. And you're gonna ask him to come in against the top defense in the NFL and the 49ers. Like, come on, bro. Like that's not fair. That's not realistic. And I just don't understand what the strategy is here because we've seen it all. Taylor has never been playing good. if we gonna keep it a buck, he's never been playing good. It's just that the team rallied around him and his energy, and they were winning not because of him. And a lot of the fan base or whatever think that he's been doing good. But I put up a tweet today, you know. Let me refer to it right now. I'm not on camera, but Carson Wentz has thrown for 1489 passing yards versus Heineke's 1693. Mind you, Carson Wentz has played in 6 games and Taylor Heineke has played in 8 games. Carson Wentz has ran for 79 yards, Heineke 100 yards. Wentz 23 sacks, Heineke 17 sacks. Wentz 6 fumbles, 1 loss. Heineke 6 fumbles, 4 loss. They both ass. You know, they both ass, but one is playing in a completely different scheme than the other one was. And still they still have the same numbers and one played in 2 more games than the other. It's just like at some point, man, you got to get more from your passing game. And
Yeah.
you watch the all 22. I'm just coming straight off of the dome from what I seen live. Man, this dude's wide open. This dude's wide open in some plays that Taylor Heineke's throwing the ball short. Like, just put it in perspective. You may not even have needed the red zone if you had a quarterback with an arm. Jahad Dotson scores on that catch downfield because he's running past Pinnock, or Curtis Samuel on the sideline where he got to sit there and
Curtis Samuel,
wait for the damn ball for 2 feet.
De'Ami Brown, he beat the safeties deep.
Coverage.
Yeah, he beat both them safeties deep, and like the ball is like at the very the edge of the pilot or the plane, and it needs to be in the back of the end zone essentially for De'Ami to go get it and not disrupt his path. Yeah, it was a few opportunities.
Yeah, so it's just like at some point, man, you got to try to put this team in the best position. I mean, a lot of us, yeah, they rallied around Taylor at some point, cool and all, but fuck all the Jordan shit. Like, these are grown ass men that got enough money to buy their own fucking Jordans. Especially he out here buying Team Jordans, so it's not like it's some exclusive shit. I mean, like at some point, man, you gotta start doing more in the passing game, and we can't keep watching this inept offense go to work, and they're not playing no slouches in their last 3 games at all.
Yeah, and like I said, I have to agree with AJ on this whole thing because, like I said, listening to Ron's comments, I mean, I got the notion that Taylor's on thin ice, you know? So for me, you kind of putting the ultimatum out there of go out there, have the game of your life, or else you're getting benched. You know, now if he does go out there, have the game of his life, then that's not something we've seen that he does over a consistent stretch of games. So even if he goes out there, he has the game of his life. What if next week he goes back to the Taylor that you're already been thinking about benching? So that's the issue I have, because right now it just sounds like Ron's not sure of himself or what to do right there, but he doesn't want to make the change. And I guess in order to not cause such a big distraction right now while they are still in the thick of things. But my thing is, he's being more reactive than proactive right now. And in this league, I think you have to be proactive in a lot of instances, or else you're going to be sitting up there waiting to the last minute, or trying to expect Carson, as AJ said, to come in and, make a miracle happen in the middle of a game, or either he's starting next week and now you're one game out of a playoff spot, and now it's do or die, and you're putting them in that situation. So my thing is, like I said, it sounds like he's delaying the inevitable in this case. Like he's hoping that Taylor can still give you some of, as the Sunday Night Football crew said, the pixie dust, or whatever it is that Taylor's giving you during this wave or this momentum. But that's just not something I will sit there and wait on with the season on the line at this point. And that's not even to go out there and say right now that I believe Carson, is a much better quarterback or anything like that. But my thing is, as I said, if you were going to say Carson gets this start after this game, you may be, already then meshed yourself out of a playoff spot. At that point, you might be even better off playing Howell at that point. So that's what I'm saying. If he really wants to go back to the Carson well, I just wouldn't wait till Taylor has another bad game to do so, because you're just delaying the inevitable there.
Yeah, that's the thing, and y'all have said it, but the word is like delaying what you like the inevitable. Like, what's ultimately going to happen. You have 7 or 8 games with Taylor Heineke. Like, what the trend is. The trend is not good. and I want to emphasize the fact, though, because we're talking about, I want to make sure that we're very transparent with this conversation. And AJ said it, so I'm not saying that we're not acknowledging it, but AJ said both of them are trash. But I want to acknowledge the fact that the grass it's not always green on the other side, right? But you got to understand who's been playing the last 8 games first before we go back and dive into the person who was playing in the first 6 games. Watubi said it. We all know it. He's on a very short leash. But when you look at it from a player perspective, right? And this is me like spitballing, because I'm not a player. I'm not a former player either. I've never really, like, I genuinely dislike, I don't want to say the word hate. I genuinely dislike when people like harp on to intangible things that they really don't have a true clue of what is what, right? And what I mean by that is saying that because someone is liked in the locker room, players going to play extra hard for that player. And while I do think that has some merit, that holds merit, I don't think that's the end all be all. I don't think that's the ultimate reason why a team is winning or a team is losing. I don't think that's a team. That's the reason why you are on you won 6 out of your last 8, and you've been 6 or you had 1 loss in your last 8. Like, I don't think those are reasons, solid enough reasons to sit here and point to this guy and say he needs to stay in because they love him being their quarterback. I think it's overblown, and I think it's overblown because when you look at from a player's, and this is where I go back to the player side, when you look at it from a player's perspective and understanding that, hey, I love the wins that we're going, like, I love the fact that we're winning football games, right? But when you look at your side of the ball and you see that your defense is allowing X amount of points per game, and whatever those amount of points per game is winning football on the defensive side of the football, and you notice that your offense is barely getting by, and the only thing you're clinging to is those last 2 minutes because I gotta watch Taylor. I gotta watch how Taylor play. If those the only thing you're clinging to is I like him, I like how he plays in crunch time, I like the magic. Players aren't going to hold on to that forever because eventually, like, your luck is going to run out. But while your luck hasn't expired yet, people know that you cannot keep winning this way. It is not sustainable because eventually you're going to need somebody to be a difference maker on the other side of the football. And have some change. And I think at the most important position, they're not sitting here saying, "Coach, don't put Carson Wentz in." And nobody should be assuming that anybody dislikes Carson in the locker room. Just because Taylor Heineke is liked does not mean Carson Wentz is disliked. It's just a different dynamic with those two. So it's not impossible for Carson Wentz to come back in this lineup and sit here and look at this offense, the people that surrounded him, and have every single one of those people believe in him. Like, it's not impossible to think that way. And for what it's worth, for everything else that's going on that side of the football, when you think about what he had in those first 6 weeks, he didn't have a stable offensive line. And for parenthetically speaking, like, the offensive line still isn't stable. But back to the point, he didn't have a stable offensive line there. They didn't know how to approach the run game with the offensive line that Carson Wentz had. He now has a stable at running back with Brian Robinson, who is clearly the lead back and clearly the identity of this offense. And then you have your weapons who are all back. All three of them are back. Your top three players, as well as De'Ami Brown and Cam Smith. Like, you have a stable around you now, including tight ends, including Curtis Hodges, who is now off of IR and may be able to help in the role that Armani Rogers was in if they want to go that route. Point is, he has had 14 weeks now to understand Scott Turner's offense. If you want to put him in the game, like, those intangible assets or intangible qualities that Taylor Heinicke brings in the light beam that he provides to the locker room, that is still going to exist if he gets benched. He'll still do that if he gets benched. Like, he may be dejected, but the players are going to be like, all right, let's go ahead and have ourselves a season with Carson Wentz, because that's who the coaches are riding with. We're going to ride with Carson Wentz too. Do not sit here and underestimate the fact that people's mindset, especially in a business where they're making millions of dollars to win football games, make the playoffs, win the Super Bowl, that they're going to sit here and say, moving on from Taylor Heinicke, who hasn't produced much since he started in Washington this season, is going to win you. It's going to end the rest of the year. It's not going to happen like that.
I mean, and it's like, yo, if Taylor was that guy, they went and got Carson Wentz. That's where it's even more confusing with Ron Rivera's statements. And it's like, bro, you already know what the fuck he is and what he isn't. So it's like, you don't need to see more. You're just hurting this team even further by allowing this to continue. Like, it's understandable if Carson Wentz is not available due to the injury and you didn't activate him yet, and you may not have wanted to go to Sam Howell being your 5th round pick. But now that he's active, like, what's the holdup? You feel me? At some point, you have to be able to pivot, and that's why I don't care for Ron Rivera as a head coach, because it's like, you have to have foresight. You can't let things force you into doing it. You have to have foresight as a head coach, as a front office representative, to understand what's next. Like, what's my next move before it even happens? Don't sit there and get slapped in the face a bunch of times and then be like, oh, okay, now I need to pivot. like, bro, the pivot has been in front of you for some time now, because it's not like we got a quarterback that's throwing for crazy numbers, doing amazing things in the passing game. And that's why I posted those stats, because they doing the same shit. It's just that one was in a different system. One was in a pass-heavy system, and one is in a run-friendly system, but he still needs to be able to make basic plays within the passing game, and he cannot do that to save his life. And it's crippling the team, because once a team goes up, you see how bad they struggle to get back into the game. Like, it feels damn near impossible. If a team just goes up 2 touchdowns in the second quarter, you already feel like, damn, this game is over, because you know that Taylor cannot be held accountable to make plays in the passing game, and you know that they also are inept in the red zone. So you just like, oh man, that's how I felt once I seen that strip sack, fumble, recovery, and then they came down and scored. I was like, oh, this fucking game over, bro. Like, because there's no way in hell Taylor Heinicke is coming back and being forced to pass the ball and going against this defense where they're, even offensively, they were doing weird things. Like, they rotated tackles. Like, I seen Lucas play left tackle at a certain point of the game. Like, what are we doing here? I've never seen that in professional football, where you're rotating healthy guys on your offensive line. Like, that is the weirdest thing to me. And it just seemed like they just weren't prepared once again for Wink Martindale's system, which is so weird to me, because it does not really matter who's outside pass rushing or who's the interior pass rushers. It's it's simple math. They're sending 6 and you only have 5. You feel me? You only have 5 to block. And then you complicate it even worse by doing empty sets. If you already can't block with a running back there, why would you then do empty sets? It's like, what are you expecting? And your quarterback does not plan to run. He has no intentions to
for
run.
what it's worth, though, because I don't like the empty sets part. Like, I ain't really had no huge issue with the empty sets. I think there's two things. I think the problem, though,
if you were the offensive coordinator going against Wink Martindale, you would not call more than one empty set during that game.
So what would you do to protect against? What would you do?
I would keep running in play action and bootleg.
No, I'm saying when you get into your pass sets, you're planning to pass. I'm not talking about like a run game. I'm saying when you are planning to pass, what are you doing? Like, what is your protection scheme?
I'm either gonna line up in single back, or I'm gonna at least line up in shotgun and have my running back there to help chip block. But I'm not gonna go empty set when I know somebody's sending all out blitzes, bro.
So you're emphasizing
my quarterback ain't reading that fast, and I know guys ain't getting open that quick for him to make those reads and throw it that fast.
So you're emphasizing the threat of a run, like the threat of a run from a running back. Like you want to keep that back there.
Definitely, I want you to either have to worry about a possible draw, a halfback screen, something. But worst case, my running back is going to chip block somewhere. Like whoever is the free man, he's going to chip block. But when you just do an empty set, we know you passing, and we know you're not going after no screen passes because we haven't seen that yet. So it's like, hey, come get me. Pretty much, that's what you're doing. When you keep doing it repeatedly, you're literally saying, "Come sack me, dog."
Yeah,
come sack me.
The reason why I said I didn't have no issue with it was mainly because they showed that there was some voids and some opportunity against the Giants when they ran those empty sets. I'm talking about the last game in particular. They had some opportunities, but I think the problem was more of two things. One, I mean, obviously we know about the strip sack that led to the touchdown, but more like when they actually had time to throw the football, Taylor Heineke really wasn't able to connect on a couple of occasions. Like that part is where I'm like, it's not the formation that they come out of. It's literally the execution, and that's why I say I didn't have a problem with it, because like when you talk about like pressure disguises and things like that, you got to know like there's several ways to address it, including how you just said you would bring it, how you would address their pressures. You can keep 6 in, you can keep 7 in, or you can just keep 5 in and force them, or force your quarterback to understand, or your block scheme, your protection scheme, to identify who may be the free man. If there's a free man, it's going to come to the left side. Or if it's a free man, it's going to come to the right side. Taylor, you need to figure that shit out, and you need to get the ball out your hand. And I think that's kind of where I like the nuance part. Like, I don't really have a big issue with them going empty. Like, I don't like when I say, like when I talk about like list of issues, throughout the season, and this is why I bring it up, because people say this a lot and they have said it throughout the season. I don't have an issue with them going empty. It's more about execution from the players, but also the coordinator, because sometimes he don't even dial Scott Turner. He doesn't even dial up the calls where like they can win quickly. And that's kind of what gets in their way at times too. That's kind of where my head was at. Okay, where are we at? Let's catch up with some of the comments. To game plan against Washington, just watch Ron's pressure. Oh yeah, I too did say that. Chip block, tight ends. Yes, you can keep, and that's another way to get empty, or maybe single back or empty. You have that tight end in line as well. Have him chip. I don't mind the empty set, just not at our own team. What's going on, Tommy? Appreciate you checking in. Martel said 1 point in the game. Pete Haley said the Giants knew we were going empty before we even broke the huddle. We can't figure out blitz pickups at all. I heard Taylor scream to the line slide left on the broadcast. The line. I don't even know about this, but that's funny. All right, or maybe that was intentional. I don't know. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the next topic. We close out with this one. This is going to be an interesting conversation. So Montel had brought up a few moments ago. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to keep this up here for a little bit, and we can this part. Logan Thomas cannot block Watubi. I 100% agree. I do not like it. But I'm going to keep this comment up for the sake of the conversation, and we'll continue on. So 46% chance as it stands today to make the playoffs. And our guy P, 50 Gut Blog on Twitter, he's been on the show a few times, said he posed the question, what would you consider a disappointing finish to the season now at 7-6-1 with 3 games to go? What would reasonably be a success? What would you perceive as progress, or what would you perceive as digression? So everybody in the chat, I want to hear y'all answers as well. What would be a disappointing finish to the season? What would be reasonable success, and all that in between? What are y'all thoughts? Fellas, I'll go first because I think the biggest thing when I heard this question and why I brought up the spaces, AJ, is because I remember at one point in time, and I laughed when I heard this question. And it's not because the question that was asked or that Pete asked this question, but I laughed because it's like, bruh, I said like week 3 or week 4, when everybody was talking about it's time to fire Ron Rivera, I had said, man, look, I want everybody to know that this season may get drastically better in the middle of the season. But you can't waver because Ron Rivera does this all the time. He does this, and I'm not saying that we're not making the playoffs. I'm saying based on this question and how it's posed, and what would be disappointing finish to the season, I'm like, well, look, you started off 2-6. This is a person who was notoriously known for slow starts. This is a person who can't get out of his way for a good portion of a season before they decide, all right, let's get on a run and try to figure this thing out. And more than half the time they don't. Like when you see all these things and you see that Washington is 2-6 and now they're 7-6-1, and they still have a chance to miss the playoffs at 8-1, or maybe even 9-1, you miss the playoffs. Who knows? Or I'm guessing. Like those things are interesting to see because it's exactly how things play out with Ron Rivera. Like he does this all the time in the sense of he can convince you that this team is it and that he's the right person for the coaching job. And then like, boom, you got duped all of a sudden yet again in a coach that really isn't in position to carry this team beyond the mark of just an average football team. Like they need to get to that next level. And if you believe in what other people were saying when this team was 1-4, when this team was 1-3, like those are the voices who have been aware of like certain things for years past. Like that is the thing. So what would I consider a disappointing finish to the season? I don't know, because I'm not surprised if they don't make the playoffs. I've been expecting it. I've said that, so I don't know. And I'll get the floor to you all, and maybe you all have an actual answer of what may be a disappointing finish. But maybe I can answer what would be a reasonable success. Making the playoffs and getting the playoff dub, like that would be a reasonable success. Like that is the level to which like the expectations were raised in the offseason in my head from Ron Rivera when he said that, you know, this is the team ready to take the next level. So reasonable success is making the playoffs and getting a playoff win. Disappointing finish. I can't be disappointed. Like I don't expect them to make the playoffs. I hadn't expected them to make the playoffs for a long period of time this season. And I knew how this thing will play out at this point of the year because Ron is going to find a way to get you back and talking about December football and things like that. So what do you all think about the question? Where's your head at?
Well, first, I mean, I can answer this 2 ways. I mean, if you asked me this question before the season, my answer would have been clearly not making the playoffs. And reason being is because this was a season that Ron kept kind of talking about. We're close. This is the year we're going to take a leap. And you look at the last 2 seasons, he won 7 games each of those last 2 seasons. One of those seasons was a playoff year, which they backed into the playoffs by winning the division, absolutely the worst possible year for the division. So then they come back the next year, they win 7 games, but they had a top 2 hardest schedule in the league. So this year the talk was, okay, you've been winning 7 games the last 2 years and your roster wasn't where you thought you were, even though you didn't have the quarterback position, but you think your roster is getting better every year. That's what Ron is saying. We're close. So you kind of assume, especially having one of the easiest schedules in the league, that this should be a playoff team for Ron, or at least the leap that he makes. He's going to win more than 7 games, and he can get this team into the playoffs with a really weak schedule. And now seeing how the season played out, they started off terribly. They just didn't look like they were ready, and we were hopping on Ron's ass. Then they go on this winning streak, or this really good level of play where they play themselves into position for the playoffs. And not only that, controlling their own destiny. And they still control their own destiny. So the answer is easy for me at this point. Anything short of the playoffs this late in the season is a high disappointment for me, because you control your destiny in December, and you've been telling us since the start of the year that this was your leap. So we are expecting that leap, and you are in position. So anything less than playoffs at this point will be disappointing. Nothing would seem like progress at that point, because a lot of people already have the premonition or the notion that Ron Rivera is a mediocre coach, or he is the example of a mid coach. So if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, in a year where you're playing a relatively weak schedule, and a year where you actually control your destiny in December, the reputation for Ron is not going to change at that point, especially because you're probably going to finish with 8, maybe 9 wins. And that's the definition of mediocre or mid. Now, if you have that without the playoffs, like I said, you can't elevate that. So now, to answer the question about my opinion on what constitutes this as a success, winning a playoff game for me. Now, if you make the playoffs and you lose the playoff game, I'm not going to be disappointed, but I'm also not going to call it a success. But if you win a playoff game, that to me makes me feel like, oh, we're progressing now. And I guess I say that because I do feel like any of the first round matchups that they probably can get themselves against outside of San Francisco is probably a winnable matchup. Vikings, they have a chink in the armor. Tampa Bay, you're probably not going to get to the NFC South winner, but either way, that's a winnable matchup. So that, they can put themselves in position, but can they put themselves in position to win the game and put themselves at that level where they can be talking about, maybe, man, if we sneak this one here, we can go to a conference championship. Now, no one would expect them to win 2 games in the playoffs, but that one game will make you feel like they're at least on the right path, and this wasn't a disappointment at all.
One thing, my bad, Jason. You're only looking forward to the game because you thinking that the Niners finna bring a beat down to the Commanders. So you think you slick. Appreciate you checking in, but you're not slick, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Daniel Snyder wasn't possibly selling this team full out, we'd be having a different conversation overall. I think from a lot of other people's perspectives in regards to Ron Rivera. But I feel like the only way this can be a success, like Dre said, is if you make the playoffs and you win a playoff game. If you definitely fail making the playoffs, you should be fired, because this team still has these same glaring holes that need to be fixed next year, which is quarterback and offensive line. You got the defensive line trenches taken care of, which was almost a fuck up because you lost Ioannidis and Tim Settle, but some way along the way you got blessed with being able to get Ridgeway off of waivers from the Cowboys. Your second round pick of Fedarian Mathis got injured the first game, maybe the first series of the first game. You were able to bounce back defensively because you then had your quarterback that you traded for get injured, and now the offensive strategy has changed, which allowed the defense to have more energy and not having to come on the field so much, because now you created somewhat of an identity as a run-first team. But overall, there's still major glaring holes within how he coaches the game, the people that he empowers to lead the offensive side of the ball, even the defensive side of the ball. Still up in the air with the quarterback thing after you done committed $28 million to Carson Wentz and traded, a possible pick that could turn into a second round. I just feel like the only way the season can be successful for Ron Rivera, especially going into, what is this, year 3 or 4?
This is year 3.
So year 3, and after all the things that he said, is to make the playoffs and win a game. I'm seeing comments in here like Ron is a locker room builder. Like, where the hell did you get that from? Like, like
I think he just meant like culture type deal.
Yeah, man. But so many times when we talk about Ron Rivera, we forget who really lifted that team to be of prominence, which is Cam Newton. Like, Cam Newton got a lot of guys paid on Carolina, whether it be with Carolina or other teams. Like, just Ron has never really had a good offensive line. But, you know, the way the Pro Bowl works, if you're a winning team and you got a successful record, a lot of guys on your squad are going to get to the Pro Bowl. Trey Turner has never been elite in my eyes. Andrew Norwell was never elite in my eyes. But
And one of them got an All-Pro bid.
Yeah, Cam Newton was elite, so that helped to make guys. It made people look at them as they were elite, but Carolina has always struggled with offensive line issues. It's always been the case. He's never had a top tier offensive line, and you can see that those same things are happening here in Washington as well. You think that you could just plug and play guys in the trenches, and being a former player, you would think that he would pay more attention to the fact that you got to be able to win on your offensive line and your defensive line. That would be a primary focus, and it's not. Like, there's no real youth on that front line offensively. And Cosme can play, but he's not playing for some reason. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know if that was addressed in presser.
That is weird.
Asking, but he's not playing tackle or guard, and you're playing with washed up ass motherfuckers at guard and Norwell and Turner. Charles Leno, I mean, he got to play just because, but this is a guy that's getting paid $12 million to get treated like a rag dog out there. Like, I mean, you can't even improve this offensive line next year because there's so many positions of need on that offensive line. It's like you have to get a quarterback that can also facilitate on the fly. Like, he has to be able to make things happen unscripted. And there's no one in the free agency market that's available that can do that. The only thing, I guess we probably won't talk about it too much because of this push going on. Like I said privately to y'all, man, they gotta make a strong push and go after Lamar Jackson. Like, Curtis Samuel, Jahad Dotson, and Terry McLaurin need to be they need to be in South Florida every day with Lamar Jackson this offseason. Wherever he want to throw, they need to be there. During Super Bowl, I better see them fools taking Lamar out to dinner or something, dog, because that's the only way that this team is going to be able to improve overnight next year, no matter who the coaching staff is, and especially if it is Ron Rivera. But, yeah, only way this can be a success is you get the playoffs and you win a game. And the matchups do look favorable. The only team that I see within the wild card matchup, if it were to stand, that I can't feel sure that they could beat is San Francisco. But everybody else, they should be at least in the game. But it also depends on who's that quarterback. If it's Carson Wentz, I feel more inclined to say they got a higher chance to win. If it's Taylor Heineke, like I said, if a team go up 14-0 on them or 14-3, it's a long ass day. Whereas we just watched a game Sunday night where Tampa went up on Cincinnati, and them boys came back and beat their ass.
Yeah,
not even just
FanDuel for having
like they beat
a little refund
ass.
option. Boy, I made a live bet, bro, and I said something ain't right here. I said something ain't right here, bro. Let me go ahead. I lost $9, but compared to what I bet, like, nigga, I'll take this. I'll take this $9 loss.
And AJ, I actually wanted to comment on something you had mentioned as far as about Lamar Jackson. I'm in 100% agreement, and not necessarily just Lamar, but I would definitely be throwing my name in the Lamar hat this offseason.
Okay.
But I know,
chat, y'all taking Lamar? Talk to us. Go ahead.
Yes,
go ahead.
Are you? But no, and the thing is because we're looking at this team now, and a lot of the fan base will tell you when it comes to trying to acquire a quarterback, oh, we're not a quarterback away, or we have too many holes on this roster. I think you're seeing a good overall roster from Washington, and you still need to shore up the offensive line, certainly. But you're seeing, the skill position players, the wide receivers look good, the running backs look good. You got some studs on defense. Guys are growing on defense. So you have the luxury, in my opinion, now to get aggressive for a quarterback this offseason. To a lot of people that don't like to go aggressively for quarterbacks, whether that's a trade up in the draft or maybe trading for a high profile quarterback out there that may be available, this is the time to do it. And I know a lot of people may think Ron may not want to, take a developmental option, and he probably doesn't with this roster. So if you're Ron, this has to be a serious consideration for you at this point in getting really aggressive for your quarterback this year. Now, I know they called themselves getting aggressive last year with Carson Wentz. They gave up a third rounder and a second rounder, but again, Carson Wentz was a reclamation project. This was a guy you were hoping was going to turn his career around. Lamar Jackson's the actual stud that for some reason Baltimore hasn't paid. And honestly, I think if you plan on keeping Scott Turner around, I don't know what Ron's plans are, but this is probably the quarterback that I would imagine Scott Turner will salivate over in a Lamar Jackson, because you can do so much with the guy. So again, he has to be a serious option this offseason. And if he's not a serious option, someone, at least maybe one of those rookie quarterbacks that's going to get drafted top 3, but Ron's going to have to make that aggressive move this year. And I think he finally has the luxury to do so.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go all in on Lamar, because I don't even feel like this coaching staff has the ability to even draft a quarterback in the first or second round, because you've already attempted that in a sense with like Carson Wentz. You already tried that aggressive move. So if you're going to go any more aggressive, it has to be for that top dog. Like Lamar can get whatever he wants financially. But Baltimore is definitely going to tag him. But that tag doesn't mean that he can't work out a trade with another team. It's pretty obvious that Baltimore does not intend to fully guarantee Lamar Jackson a contract. There's no reason that he should even be in this boat. He shouldn't even have to leverage his play on the field at this point to get that type of money and that contract. And nothing improves for him. It actually gets worse if he signs that deal in Baltimore, because they don't have the ability to go get him an elite wide receiver, whereas he can go to a team where they already have wide receivers. I mean, he signs that big deal in Baltimore, he's going to be playing with Devin Duvernay, Rashad Bateman coming off an injury, possibly re-signing Demarcus Robinson, but it's all, below average guys. So that's where, I feel like it's a possibility if this staff that is still in place has foresight and they want to save their jobs and want to be able to push this team over the hump, because you can easily give up your next 3 first-round picks and put this team in a completely different level from an energy standpoint, off the field and on the field, locker room, and allowing your playmakers to be able to have somebody they could trust at quarterback. But yeah, I mean, overall, man, Ron's in a position where he needs to advance to the playoffs and needs to win a game. And I personally feel like there's no top team in the NFL, and especially in the NFC. I feel like the Eagles, they've already lost to Washington one time, but I feel like they're beatable. I feel like everyone is pretty much beatable. The only reason why I give San Francisco the edge somewhat is because Washington has Taylor Heineke at quarterback. Outside of that, if they had Carson Wentz, I feel like it's a toss-up game. But anybody in the wild card especially is beatable.
I don't know. I have this battle in my head that always talks about, both these quarterbacks. Like I try to get careful with my expectations with Carson, because he's like, at this point he's the unknown. We just know what he hasn't had compared to what Taylor has had. But I think for you all said it like nicely, bro, and I think we all come to agreement, like the playoffs. My expectation or a successful season is playoffs and a win, but I guess I should have rephrased it, and I'm gonna take the time to correct myself now. Success and towards the question that we were specifically talking about, it has to be playoffs. It has to be a win as well, and that's what's considered a success. That's also disappointing if he doesn't get to that point. I don't need to rehash much else. I do think where did Jason said Jason has a lot of respect for Washington. He said whoever you guys line up over McGlinchey though is scary. He can't pass block for anything. And with our secondary banged up, McLaurin is underrated. So that's one quick insight. We're gonna have somebody on Thursday to break down to help us break down that Niners matchup as well. So we'll get some more from the Niners side as well as from the good man Jason that's checking in the chat. So we did have a Derek Carr mention. I ain't gonna lie to you, Magic Man. Bruh, I have this. I just know Derek Carr in the months of November and December, and I do not appreciate him. I don't think he that good. And I am not gonna be the one that's going to stick my neck out there and trade for him. If I'm the GM, I am not trading for that man. I am interested in Lamar, and I think the only reason why Lamar is worth the conversation for me is because he's a free agent, or pending free agent, or upcoming free agent. Something may happen in terms of like a franchise tag, so that is what it is. But at the same time, that's probably the only person I'm really considering. Outside of that, Brad, take me to the draft. Take me to the draft, and maybe I go get that bridge in Jimmy G. Maybe I go get that bridge and bring Taylor Heineke back. I'm speaking from a team's perspective. Like they're gonna have some bridge options in that free agency pool as well. So we'll see. We'll see how that things go. All right, but schedule, we're out of here. Appreciate y'all checking in. Schedule wise, tomorrow is Commander's Morning Show. We're going to do the film session as always on that Wednesday. And then the fellas will be back on Thursday to help break down the 49ers and Commanders. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, Dre, AJ. My opinion is swaying a little bit on this game, and I'm gonna tell you why on Thursday once I get some more information. And Jason just gave me a good idea to take a look at a couple of Niners games, so I'm gonna try and fit that in as well, see if I can formulate my conclusion. But y'all take it easy, man. Y'all be safe, enjoy y'all day, enjoy y'all evening, all that good stuff whenever y'all listening. Fellas, see y'all Thursday. We out of here. Peace.